Chapter 1: The Crack in the Mirror. The lake shimmered under the faint glow of the moon, its surface dark and still as if holding its breath. Sofia stepped onto the creaking balcony, seeking a reprieve from the suffocating tension of the evening's dinner. The cool air brushed against her skin, but her attention was quickly drawn to the figures by the water's edge. Alex stood near the shore, his posture rigid, his hands slicing the air with agitated gestures. Opposite him was Emma, her voice rising sharply before dropping to a low, venomous murmur. Though Sofia couldn't make out their words, the intensity of the argument was unmistakable. Emma's movements were sharp and deliberate, and when she reached out to touch Alex's arm, it wasn't with affection but control. Then, suddenly, Emma turned and stormed back toward the house. For a moment, Alex remained frozen, staring after her, his chest heaving. His shoulders were taut, as if holding back an explosion of emotions. Sofia shifted slightly, and the old wooden railing beneath her gave a soft groan. Alex's head snapped up. Their eyes locked across the distance. Her breath caught. There was something raw and unguarded in his gaze, a flicker of anger, confusion, or perhaps fear. The moment stretched uncomfortably long before Alex abruptly turned away, his silhouette dissolving into the darkness. Inside, the hum of subdued conversation and clinking glasses greeted Sofia as she stepped back into the warm glow of the living room. The fire crackled in the hearth, but the heat did little to thaw the unease settling in her chest. "You've been gone a while," Daniel's voice broke through her thoughts. She turned to see him leaning casually against the doorway, his dark eyes watching her with quiet intensity. His tone was light, but there was an edge to it, like the snap of a trap hidden beneath the surface. "I just needed some air," Sofia replied, her voice steady, though her mind was still on what she had just witnessed. Daniel's gaze lingered, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "The lake has a way of drawing people out, doesn't it? Or maybe it's someone by the lake." His words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Sofia stiffened but forced herself to stay composed. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't you?" he said, his tone still calm but carrying a subtle undercurrent of something sharper. Before she could respond, he stepped closer, his voice dropping slightly. "You're spending a lot of time noticing Alex lately. Maybe more than you should." The accusation in his words sent a chill through her. Daniel smiled faintly and turned to leave, his departure as casual as his arrival, leaving Sofia to wrestle with the tension he'd left behind. As the evening wore on, Sofia tried to shake the feeling of unease. She sat near the fireplace, her eyes drawn to the flickering flames, but her mind was elsewhere, on Alex, on Emma's cold, cutting tone, and on Daniel's unsettling words. The lake outside loomed in her thoughts, its dark surface a mirror to the secrets she was beginning to sense around her. She sipped her wine, her grip tightening on the glass as the images replayed in her mind. The way Alex's eyes had met hers, raw and unguarded. The way Emma's voice had cut through the quiet, laced with venom. And the way Daniel's smile had carried a weight she couldn't yet define. Something was wrong. And Sofia couldn't shake the feeling that whatever it was, she was already a part of it. Chapter 2: The Creak of Doors. The morning light seeped through the curtains, its soft glow doing little to lift the heavy atmosphere inside the house. Sofia sipped her coffee, her eyes wandering to the empty chair at the breakfast table. "Where's Alex?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Emma, seated across from her, paused mid-sip of her tea. "He left early," she said, her tone clipped. "He does that sometimes, needs time to cool off." But something in Emma's voice didn't sit right. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed her teacup back on the saucer, and she avoided Sofia's gaze. "Do you know where he went?" Sofia pressed, careful to keep her voice light. Emma's smile was tight, forced. "Does it matter? He'll come back when he's ready. He always does." The words sounded rehearsed, hollow, and they only deepened the pit of unease in Sofia's stomach. Later that day, Sofia found herself walking through the sun-dappled gardens with Daniel. He had suggested the stroll, his tone warm and inviting, but now his presence felt heavier, as though he were trying to keep her distracted. You seem restless, he said, his voice calm but probing. Worried about Alex? Sofia hesitated. Not worried. Just curious. He seemed off last night. Daniel chuckled softly, his hands slipping into his pockets. Alex has always been dramatic. He likes to make an impression. Emma didn't seem concerned either, Sofia said, testing his reaction. Daniel shrugged, his gaze fixed on the path ahead. They've always had a complicated relationship. It's best not to get involved. Before Sofia could respond, Daniel stopped and turned to face her. His dark eyes locked onto hers, his expression softening. But I can tell it's bothering you. His hand brushed against hers as he spoke, a fleeting touch that lingered in her thoughts long after. If there's something you're worried about, you can tell me, he added, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Sofia looked away, her heart skipping a beat. The warmth in his voice was familiar, almost comforting, but the undercurrent of his words made her feel like she was walking a fine line she didn't fully understand. By the afternoon, the house felt oppressively quiet. Emma had retreated to her room, and Daniel had disappeared somewhere into the sprawling property. Sofia wandered aimlessly, her thoughts clouded with questions about Alex and the peculiar dynamics of the people around her. Passing Emma's room, she noticed the door was slightly ajar. A muffled sound caught her attention, and she leaned closer, her pulse quickening. Inside, Emma was crouched by her bed, hastily shoving something into a small box before snapping the lid shut. Sofia stepped back quickly, her heart racing as Emma stood and moved toward the door. She held her breath, but Emma didn't notice her as she exited the room, her face pale and her steps hurried. Later that evening, Sofia passed the study and noticed a faint glow from the laptop left open on the desk. She hesitated, glancing down the empty hallway, before stepping inside. The screen displayed an email chain, and at the top was a message from Alex. I know what you did. We'll talk when I get back. Her stomach twisted as she stared at the words. The implication was clear, but the details were maddeningly absent. What had Emma done? And why was Alex threatening her? The sound of a door creaking in the hallway made Sofia jump. She quickly stepped away from the laptop, her heart pounding as she slipped back into the corridor. That night, Sofia lay in bed, staring at the darkened ceiling. The house was silent except for the occasional creak of the old wooden floors. But sleep didn't come. Her mind replayed the events of the day, the tremor in Emma's hands, Daniel's probing questions, Alex's ominous message. Somewhere in the depths of the house, a door creaked softly, and Sofia's breath caught. The sound was faint, almost imperceptible, but it sent a shiver down her spine. She pulled the covers tighter around her, her thoughts circling the same question over and over. What had she stumbled into? Chapter 3, Too Close. The lake shimmered faintly under the morning sun, but Sofia hardly noticed its beauty. Her thoughts were consumed by the previous day's discoveries, Emma's trembling hands, the mysterious email from Alex, and the unsettling tension that seemed to fill the house. She needed answers, and she needed them soon. Her first step was Emma. Sofia found her in the kitchen, absently stirring a cup of tea. The shadows under her eyes spoke of a restless night, but her posture was guarded, her expression tight. You seem tired, Sofia said, keeping her tone casual. Emma glanced at her, the faintest flicker of suspicion crossing her face. Didn't sleep well, she replied. Sofia leaned against the counter, watching her carefully. Do you think Alex is okay? Emma's hand paused mid-stir, but only for a moment. Of course he's okay. He just needs time. You know how he gets. Sofia pressed on. It's just that message he sent. It sounded serious. Emma's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. Message? Sofia hesitated, realizing she'd said too much. I just mean, he seemed upset last night. I thought maybe he mentioned something to you. Emma's lips pressed into a thin line, and she turned back to her tea. Alex always makes things bigger than they are. It's nothing. But her tone lacked conviction, and Sofia couldn't shake the feeling that Emma was hiding more than just her worries. Later that morning, Sofia made her way to Alex's room. The door creaked softly as she pushed it open, revealing the disarray inside: unmade bed, clothes scattered on the floor, and a faint, lingering scent of his cologne. She rifled through the desk drawers, careful not to disturb too much. In the bottom drawer, she found a notebook, plain and unassuming, but heavy with meaning as she flipped through its pages. Alex's handwriting filled the notebook, his words sharp and emotional. He wrote about his frustrations with Emma, his growing doubts about Daniel, and, to Sofia's shock, his thoughts about her. Sofia deserves to know the truth. I've waited too long, but I can't keep quiet anymore. This can't stay buried. Her breath hitched as she read the final line. I just need to figure out how to tell her without ruining everything. Sofia closed the notebook, her hands trembling. What truth was Alex talking about? And why had he felt the need to protect her from it? The sound of footsteps in the hallway jolted her from her thoughts. Quickly, Sofia slid the notebook back into the drawer and stepped out into the hall just as Daniel rounded the corner. What are you doing up here? He asked, his tone light but his eyes sharp. Just thinking, Sofia replied, hoping her voice didn't betray her. Daniel tilted his head, studying her for a moment before stepping closer. You've been doing a lot of that lately. Sofia's heart raced as he stopped just inches away, his presence almost overwhelming. I know you're worried about Alex, he said softly, his voice laced with concern. But you don't have to handle this alone. His hand brushed against her arm, a touch so brief it could have been accidental, but the intensity in his gaze told her otherwise. You can trust me, Sofia. Always. For a moment, she felt the pull of his words, the familiarity of his voice. But then she remembered the notebook, the tension in Emma's voice, and the doubts that now clung to everything around her. I'm fine, she said, stepping back. I just need some time to think. Daniel's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, disappointment, frustration, as he nodded and walked away. That evening, Sofia found herself in the garden, the cool breeze doing little to calm her racing thoughts. She was still holding on to the weight of Alex's words, the lingering sensation of Daniel's closeness, and the gnawing suspicion that Emma was at the center of something dark. As she walked, she noticed a shadow moving in the distance. Squinting, she realized it was Emma, slipping into the woods behind the house. Without thinking, Sofia followed, keeping her distance as Emma disappeared into the trees. What she found sent a chill through her. Emma knelt by a small clearing, her hands shaking as she buried something beneath the loose soil. Sofia couldn't see what it was, but the act itself felt damning, like a secret being tucked away where no one would find it. Sofia stepped back, her heart pounding as she made her way silently back to the house. Whatever Emma was hiding, Sofia knew it was only the beginning. Chapter 4: Silent Witnesses. The night was thick with silence, the kind that seemed to amplify every creak and groan of the old house. Sofia lay in bed, staring at the darkened ceiling, her thoughts racing. The image of Emma burying something in the woods haunted her, stirring questions she wasn't sure she wanted answers to. Her phone buzzed suddenly on the bedside table. Startled, she grabbed it, her pulse quickening as she saw the screen. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering, pressing the phone to her ear. Hello? A man's voice, low and rasping, came through the line. You're looking in the wrong places, he said, the words sending a chill down her spine. Go to the pantry. Look beneath the boxes. And be careful, she's always watching. The line went dead before she could respond. For a moment, Sofia sat frozen, the phone still clutched in her hand. Then, summoning her courage, she slipped out of bed and made her way down the darkened hallways to the pantry. The pantry was cold and dimly lit, the single overhead bulb casting long shadows across the shelves. Sofia's hands trembled as she moved boxes aside, revealing the wooden floor beneath. At first, she saw nothing, but then her fingers brushed against something small and hard. Pulling it out, she found a folded piece of paper, its edges worn and frayed. As she unfolded it, her breath caught. It was a note, scrawled in Alex's handwriting. "Sofia, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't tell you myself. Trust your instincts. They've both lied to you. Keep digging, you're closer than you think." Her heart pounded as the words sank in. Both lied to her? He had to mean Emma and Daniel. But what were they hiding? As she tucked the note into her pocket, Sofia heard a soft creak behind her. She spun around to find Daniel standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, his tone casual, but there was a sharpness in his gaze that set her on edge. "Just needed some water," Sofia replied quickly, stepping away from the corner where she found the note. Daniel's eyes flickered to the disturbed boxes on the floor, but he said nothing. Instead, he took a step closer, his posture relaxed but deliberate. "You've been restless lately," he said, his voice softer now. "Is there something you're not telling me?" His presence was overwhelming, the proximity too close for comfort. Sofia's breath hitched as his fingers brushed her wrist, the touch sending a jolt through her. "You know you can talk to me," he continued, his voice low and intimate. "Whatever's on your mind, I can help." For a moment, Sofia felt the pull of his words, the safety he offered. But then Alex's note burned in her pocket, a reminder of the lies and secrets circling around her. "I'm fine," she said, stepping back. "Just tired." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he gave her a faint smile. "All right," he said, his tone lightening. "But remember, I'm always here if you need me." As he turned and left, Sofia exhaled shakily, her hand instinctively going to the pocket where Alex's note was hidden. The next day, Sofia couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. The house felt different now, its long hallways and quiet rooms oppressive instead of comforting. She tried to avoid Emma, but the other woman found her in the living room. "You've been distant," Emma said, her tone careful. "Just tired," Sofia replied, the excuse feeling hollow even as she said it. Emma's gaze sharpened. "You're not the only one." She hesitated, then added, "I know you're worried about Alex. But don't let him drag you into something you don't understand." Sofia frowned. "What do you mean?" Emma shook her head, her lips pressing into a thin line. "Just be careful, Sofia. Not everyone in this house is who they seem to be." Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication, as Emma turned and left. That evening, Sofia stood by the window, staring out at the darkened woods. The note from Alex and Emma's cryptic warning swirled in her mind, making it impossible to think clearly. She knew one thing for certain, the lies surrounding her were closing in, and Alex's disappearance was only the beginning. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed the hour, its echo ringing through the stillness. Sofia turned away from the window, steeling herself. If the truth wouldn't come to her, she would find it herself, no matter the cost. Chapter 5. The Truth Surfaces. The storm had rolled in during the night, its winds howling through the trees and rain pelting against the windows. The house groaned under the weight of the weather, its halls colder and darker than ever. Sofia moved through them with purpose, Alex's note burning in her pocket, its words urging her forward. "Trust your instincts. They've both lied to you." She found herself standing outside Emma's room, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. The door was slightly ajar, and she could hear Emma's voice inside, sharp, low, and frantic. "You don't understand," Emma hissed. "If she finds out, it's over." There was no response, only silence. But as Sofia pushed the door open just a crack, she saw Emma pacing the room, her phone pressed to her ear. "I don't care what you think. Just get rid of it." "I'll handle her," Emma said, before ending the call and throwing the phone onto the bed. Sofia's blood ran cold. The cryptic warning, the hidden burial in the woods, it all pointed to something far darker than she had imagined. Sofia retreated before Emma could see her, her mind racing. She needed to think, to regroup, but first, she needed answers. The woods called to her like a siren. With trembling hands, she pulled on her coat and stepped outside, the storm wrapping around her as she made her way to the clearing where she had seen Emma the night before. Her flashlight cut through the rain, illuminating the disturbed patch of earth. She dropped to her knees and began to dig, her fingers numb from the cold and the wet soil. When her hand hit something hard, she froze. It was a box, small and metal, its surface scratched and battered. Sofia pried it open, her heart pounding as she revealed its contents. A set of keys. A folded photograph of Emma, Alex, and Daniel, smiling arm in arm. A handwritten note. Sofia unfolded the note, the ink smudged but legible. "They think it's over, but it's not. Sofia deserves to know. Daniel isn't who she thinks he is." The note was unsigned, but the handwriting was unmistakable, it was Alex's. When Sofia returned to the house, Daniel was waiting for her in the living room. His expression was unreadable, but his posture was tense, his hands gripping the back of the couch. "You've been out," he said, his tone carefully neutral. Sofia didn't respond, her wet coat dripping onto the wooden floor. "What did you find?" he asked, stepping closer. She pulled the note from her pocket and held it out to him. "Explain this," she demanded. Daniel's eyes flicked over the note, his jaw tightening. "It's not what you think," he said after a moment. "Then what is it?" Sofia shot back, her voice rising. "Because Alex is gone, Emma is hiding something, and you've been lying to me this whole time." "I was trying to protect you," Daniel said, his voice low and insistent. "Protect me from what?" Daniel stepped closer, his eyes pleading. "From him. From Alex. He wasn't who you thought he was, Sofia. He was manipulative, controlling. He had a way of twisting things to make everyone else look like the villain. Emma and we had to make a choice. For you. For all of us." Sofia stared at him, her mind spinning. His words made sense, but the weight of Alex's note in her pocket told a different story. Before Sofia could respond, Emma appeared in the doorway, her face pale but determined. "Don't listen to him," she said, her voice shaking. "He's lying." Daniel turned to her, his expression darkening. "You're not helping, Emma." "No, I'm done helping," Emma said, stepping into the room. "You think you can talk your way out of this? You think she won't figure it out eventually?" "Figure what out?" Sofia demanded, her gaze darting between them. Emma hesitated, her hands trembling. "He was the one who made Alex leave. He threatened him, Sofia. Said he'd ruin him if he didn't stay quiet about everything." "That's not true," Daniel snapped, his voice sharp. "She's twisting it, Sofia. Don't you see what she's doing?" The room felt like it was closing in, the storm outside matching the chaos inside. Sofia took a step back, her chest heaving as the weight of their words pressed down on her. The sound of the clock chiming broke the tension. Sofia turned away from them, her mind racing. Both of them had lied. Both of them had kept her in the dark. And Alex. Alex was still gone, his voice only echoing through the notes he had left behind. She walked to the door, her hands trembling as she gripped the handle. "Sofia," Daniel called after her, his voice breaking. "Don't do this." But she didn't look back. Epilogue: The Silent Choice. The storm passed, leaving the house shrouded in an eerie calm. Sofia stood by the lake, staring at its still surface. The keys from the box clinked softly in her hand, their purpose still unknown. Alex's note lingered in her mind: "Trust your instincts." She turned toward the house, her heart heavy with the choice she knew she had to make. To leave the lies behind, or to keep digging, no matter the cost. The water rippled as a breeze passed, carrying the echoes of a truth she wasn't sure she was ready to face. Chapter 6: The Silent Choice. The lake was quiet now, its surface undisturbed under the soft glow of the morning sun. Sofia stood on the edge of the dock, the box she had unearthed from the woods clutched in her hands. The weight of its contents, Alex's note, the keys, and the photograph, felt heavier than the small metal container should allow. Behind her, the house loomed in the distance, its windows catching the early light, reflecting a cold emptiness. It had once felt like a refuge, but now it was suffocating, each room echoing with secrets she wished she had never uncovered. "They've both lied to you." Alex's words repeated in her mind, circling like a persistent shadow. But even now, as she held the proof of their betrayal, Sofia wasn't sure who she could trust, or if she could trust anyone at all. Sofia turned the keys over in her hands, their purpose still a mystery. Were they part of Alex's final message, a path to the truth he wanted her to find? Or were they just another thread in a tangled web she couldn't unravel? She tucked them back into the box and walked up the hill toward the house. Every step felt heavier, as though the weight of her choices was pulling her back toward the lake. Inside, the house was silent. Emma and Daniel were nowhere to be seen, but Sofia could feel their presence lingering in every shadow, in every creak of the old wooden floorboards. She climbed the stairs to her room and set the box on the desk, her fingers brushing against Alex's note once more. "Trust your instincts." Her instincts told her to dig deeper, to find the truth Alex had tried to share. But they also warned her of the cost, that she might lose everything she had left, including herself. The silence was broken by a knock at her door. Sofia turned sharply to see Emma standing there, her face pale but her expression resolute. "We need to talk," Emma said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Sofia crossed her arms, her gaze hard. "Talk about what?" "About how you and Daniel lied to me?" "About Alex?" Emma flinched at his name, but she didn't back down. "Alex wasn't who you think he was," she said, her voice trembling. "He wasn't innocent in this, Sofia. He wanted to destroy everything, me, Daniel, this house. He—" "Stop!" Sofia cut her off, her voice shaking with anger. "You both keep telling me what Alex wanted, what Alex did, but neither of you will tell me the truth." Emma's shoulders sagged, and for a moment, she looked almost defeated. "The truth is complicated," she said softly. "No, the truth is simple," Sofia snapped. "You're just too afraid to admit it." Before Emma could respond, Daniel appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. "What's going on?" Sofia turned to him, her anger boiling over. "I'm done with your games. Both of you. I found Alex's note. I know he was trying to tell me something you didn't want me to know." Daniel's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Sofia thought he might deny it. But then he sighed, his shoulders slumping. "Alex was reckless," he said. "He thought he could control everything. When he couldn't, he wanted to burn it all down. We didn't lie to hurt you, Sofia. We lied to protect you." Emma's voice cut through the tension, sharp and bitter. "Protect her? Or protect yourself?" The words landed like a blow, and Daniel's expression darkened. "You're one to talk," he said coldly. "You think she wouldn't find out about what you did? About what you hid in the woods?" Emma's face went white, and for a moment, Sofia thought she might crumble. But instead, she straightened, her eyes blazing. "At least I didn't push him to leave," she spat. "At least I didn't threaten him. The air between them crackled with tension, and Sofia felt as though she were on the edge of a precipice. Their words revealed just enough to confirm her worst fears, but not enough to give her the clarity she so desperately needed. Sofia stepped back, her heart pounding as their argument raged on. She turned and walked out of the room, their voices fading behind her. Downstairs, she grabbed the box and slipped outside, the morning air sharp and cool against her skin. She didn't stop until she reached the dock, the lake stretching out before her like a blank slate. For a long moment, she stood there, staring at the water. Then she opened the box, pulling out the photograph, the keys, and Alex's note. She studied each item, letting the memories and questions they carried wash over her. Finally, she made her decision. The day wore on, the storm clouds from the night before giving way to a pale, cold sun. Sofia walked back to the house, her mind made up. She would leave. Not because she had all the answers, but because she knew she couldn't find them here, not with Emma and Daniel, not with the weight of their lies pressing down on her. She packed her things, leaving the box on the desk in her room. Before closing it, she added a note of her own: the truth always surfaces, even in silence. As she drove away, the house grew smaller in her rearview mirror, its secrets still locked inside. The lake, quiet and unassuming, reflected the sky, hiding whatever truths it held beneath its surface. Sofia didn't know where she was going, but for the first time in days, she felt free.
Subscribe to never miss a new story and discover even more captivating tales.